And now it's affecting everybody personally because you've got the hike in your bills.
It's been a tough one.
The start of the switch from petrol to electric car.
I think the government will release what I call in my industry nudges.
Taxes somehow were going to go up, and they did.
Electrifying majority of the homes. We have a lot of electricity being wasted. Andy, obviously at Infinity you see a lot of customers, because that's outside, customer facing. What's your take on how things are in the energy market, taking consideration what customers feel?
General feedback would be that I think they're in a position where they're hearing the buzzwords that they need or we want them to hear, and that's through the general news. So whether that's energy crisis or certain bills being inflated, there's obviously the engagement from the customers because it's centralized news and it's affecting them in their pockets. General feedback to customers is, I guess it's like me and you were in the fitness game 20 years ago. And at that time, when it first came out, customers heard buzzwords, obesity or injury or getting fit, but they didn't know how, and they needed a lot of education when gyms first came out, to now where majority of people know exactly what to do in terms of the basics. I think our industry is at that 20 years ago scenario where they're hearing the buzzwords but not quite knowing what to do. Some have investigated certain channels and you can help them maybe correct misinformation or confirm the things that they've researched. But the majority, I think, just need good advice at the minute.
You actually make a good point there, because when I started in 2013, the customer base there had no knowledge of energy efficiency.
Yeah.
And at that time when I was hearing it, it was mainly, we've got a climate crisis coming and climate change, all them sort of talks. When I compare the customers now, their education level in the sense of energy efficiency has increased, but it's still not there because, like you said, customers get quite confused of what to do.
Yeah, and I think that general awareness, you're always going to get, this isn't new, it's 10 to 12 years plus. You can go back in terms of energy crisis either coming or started or happening. And the reality is the majority, myself included, won't react until it affects them personally. And now it's affecting everybody personally because you've got the hike in your bills. It's the same as maybe 5 years ago, the start of the switch from petrol to electric cars, because it started to increase in prices for petrol. So then it pushes people to make that jump. But you're right, 10, 12, 20 years ago, this is nothing new. But it was only the hard radical at that stage that either wanted to change their environment or live a little bit more off-griddy, or an activist of some type that were really, really engaged. And now it's kind of everybody. And it's, like I say, it's moved to that educational, right, it's affecting me now, what do I do?
So affecting is technically what you're saying is the cost of living and the rise in bills.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the customers that are making this, would majority of the customers make that switch because there's a form of incentive or a nudge by some form of grants? Or is it the monetary value or the handouts that the government is saying is actually encouraging people to make that switch?
It's a combination. If I was to rank it honestly, price is always going to determine volume uptake. But it's not just that, it's value. It's understanding the benefits. So what we do, obviously, or what we encourage people to do in their homes is sometimes a significant investment, but it's understanding also the benefits of that investment. For example, you may have insulation done on your home, but if the outside of your home looks brand new, what does that add to property value? Either to rent it out or to sell it or just to have a mortgage against or whatever. So I think it's really important not to just look at it as the increase or the decrease, sorry, in terms of the value of your bills, but also the increase of property value because your property is moving to a new age and therefore it's worth more. And then you start to look at the investment slightly differently than just on one stream.
I actually concur with that because you can take a typical house on a street and the EPC rating of one house is B and one EPC rating is, let's say it's E, which is quite poor. But yet they're marketing for the same value.
Yeah.
What would a buyer look at?
Yeah.
And because the EPCs are into as a mandatory, it is, I think consumers do look at the energy cost because it obviously is the second highest cost of running a home.
Yeah.
Barring the mortgage.
It's interesting. My sister, sorry to butt in, my sister bought a property recently in the south of France. It's out in the middle of nowhere and it's lovely, but they were looking at two properties and very similar in price, but one was slightly more expensive. And the reason being it was more modernized in terms of energy efficiency, solar, heat pumps, and they couldn't think of anything worse than having that work done after moving in. So they opted, it sold them the property because it was already done and they paid more for it. And so it was a pure example of how it increases a property value just by having those measures, because there is an understanding, not only is there's a reason for having those measures, but also your property is now a much more modern, sustainable living point of view. So, yeah.
So whilst people are moving, what I also feel is whilst people moving into getting energy efficiency measures done, like insulation and obviously air source heat pump and solar, there's always publicity that show the negativity side of it.
Yeah.
How do we get our customers to overcome that fear of, shoddy workmanship or bad installs, and they get that comfort of, they've got someone behind them.
And I think especially more so in this day and age because of so many media platforms that people use rather than the news, but the general news. So, good example is when iPhone came out, one catches fire, it's the central news. The same could be said with an e-bike, or it could be said with any new product that goes to market. What's the danger? You see it with EV cars, how many Teslas have caught on fire. They hit the headlines because it's a new thing and there's that wariness. Reality is, if you compared it versus anything else, it's probably less so of an issue. So I think, again, the danger side, you've got to put people at ease in terms of what these new things do, and not to necessarily hear the fear-mongering or the conspiracy against it, because there's a lot of that out there and there's a lot of attitude in terms of what people have heard from different streams. But I think even drilling that down to most people specialize in something. So what I mean by that is if you are only delivering a solar, for example, naturally a solar company is going to try and make that work for your house because that's all they've got to offer you and that's what you've inquired about. But it might not actually be right as a first move in energy efficiency. So I think, I guess where we win the most is that people trust us because we kind of do everything. And so therefore we can advise you, actually, even though you've got us here for this, or you thought this, maybe with some more detail or some more insight and some speciality, we can say, actually take this route. There was a recent example where we went to see somebody who wanted a heat pump, and it made absolute sense to us that do that next. The house was well insulated. Do the heat pump next. Get the solar done first. Let's get this free of charge in terms of we've got so much open space and roof space and floor space that we can solar your property as much as you want us to give you free energy. And then the heat pump follows secondary.
Which becomes cost effective.
Which is was their objective to be, this was an electric only house. So, I think the customer then obviously knows that they've been given the right advice, rather than if I was just a heat pump advisor, I would have made sure you were just getting them in the heat pump world. And that's not a negative to that, but it's, that's what you would do in that scenario if you were just a heat pump supplier. So that I think I've often compared it to the doctors. You might go in with a knee injury, but the real pain's coming from your shoulder first, or vice versa. So treat the right thing, and I need advice to know how to solve the issue, and it might not be from the issue that you think it's from.
So with us at Infinity, obviously we offer all the services.
Yeah.
We specialize in just energy efficiency to make home improvement. And obviously this year we opened our showroom to educate consumers, educate the future generation as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is the most important part, and my part as head of Infinity, in the sense of let's educate people, let's educate children, let's educate the future generation. Because it is a massive transition.
Yeah.
Especially with the goal set with net zero, we get net zero by 2050. Is an ambitious goal.
Yeah.
Is an ambitious goal, educating the consumers.
And for me, this was a masterstroke of genius in terms of, again, if I go back to new products came out, Apple Store, the Genius Bar, and now you can go for educational workshops, and kids can go in and understand how to make the best cutting and editing from their apps on their phones or pads or whatever it is. And you discover things that you want to discover, why it's personal to you. So I think having the showroom now, you did all of this anyway, but now having something to be able to walk somebody through and let them see all of the stages and all of the products from, what sits inside that wall of insulation or roof, or how that heat pump works and what it looks like. And that's going to go in my utility room. And have I got the space? Do I want that there? And or should I put it there? So I think to be able to educate somebody from a live showroom environment, that it's a hybrid of a finished article versus the stages of going through. We know that anybody that comes and visits, or that we can show online, this turns our words into reality. Oh yeah, I get it now. I can picture that there. I can see how big that is going to look outside my property. It's like going into a car showroom.
So I'm assuming when they, most homeowners who are starting their major projects at home, because a lot of people are doing that now. They're not moving out, and they're either extending or loft conversions, etc. This kind of gives them an indication of, hey, future-proof my renovation now.
Yeah.
To future-proof, okay, I know this is coming.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it. Then they don't have to do the upheaval again.
Which I think comes back to the value of the proposition. So again, we've talked about bringing your bills down, increasing property value. So those are fairly obvious ones. But I also think if your bills are going up and you put investment in at a certain stage, everybody's thinking in their head, how long before I pay off that investment?
Yeah, your return on investment.
What's my return on investment? And we know in the past, a solar system would be maybe 10 years. That's down because of cost of electric now. That's down to maybe 5, 6, 7 years, depending on your investment. Two things then that can make that much simpler is, are you making your overall home more energy efficient? So other things are helping other things. I'll give you an instance. I switched from petrol to an electric car. That was my first move. Why? Because petrol was so expensive. I worked out I could have a brand new car at the same monthly cost as I was paying out on petrol, because it was much cheaper on electric. The next natural thing was to have solar panels. So my electricity was free at times, or at least 70-80% over the course of the year reducted. So now I'm factoring cost of petrol as well as my electricity bill and my car purchase into one continuum. And you can take that further, that, making yourself more compact and insulated is going to add again to that further, because it's going to be less. So all of these things handled together rather than looked at in their silo is the big picture. Ultimately, how do I get the best for the cheapest in terms of my costs? So yeah, return on investment is really, really important.
I'm assuming your next move will be
A heat pump.
a heat pump.
Yeah, and listen, I was fortunate. We bought a new build 10 years ago, so insulation has never been an issue. Not like houses probably pre-2000 that are insufficient generally in insulation of one way or another. That was never a problem, so I never had to solve that problem. But that's always your first move, make it compact. I know when I first came in, you explained insulation to me that basically you putting a coat on in the cold weather, right? It's that simple, shut the doors, shut the windows, make sure heat's not escaping from somewhere, put a coat on your home. So yeah, that was my first tick box, which was because it was a fairly modern house. So yeah, the obvious for me was I'd already sold myself on electric cars, because I used to visit countries that were further ahead than us and all gone electric, and I just loved, one, the driving experience, but two, the fact of not having to go to petrol stations and those types of things. So then, of course, when joining here, yeah, solar's the first obvious, is to store my energy from the sunlight in a battery and charge my car and power my home. That's as simple as it is.
I'm assuming the future looks like, in my eyes, the future looks like hopefully every single home will become self-sustainable.
Yeah.
And not dependent on outsourcing energy, even though we're still going to need it. But it's quite interesting, again, how, you take 3 years ago, nobody heard of air source heat pumps. Or 4 or 5 years ago, it was this new technology being introduced, but yet in some European countries, they're well advanced than us.
Yeah.
Especially some of the European countries that have worse cold weathers than us, and these things work fine in them countries. So it's also important, I'm assuming, like the consumer or the customer must make a choice when they are going for these measures, that they pick the right people to do the right job. So obviously they will do the research, etc., on making sure that whoever is installing these measures are done correctly.
It's I guess it's ethically, I think, the main reason why I joined here. It's because I know your ethics in that side of things are perfection in terms of honest advice. Advice is bigger than the sale, if you like. The trust element, and I've seen now firsthand, as is starting to hit the media, is because there are new opportunities, you get an influx of traders. And so if you take solar, for example, 2-3 years ago, every electrician was suddenly becoming a solar panel installer. Yeah. So, and that was because the volume increase and there was the demand and people wanted to jump on that bandwagon. And now you're starting to see the other end where some not great installers and not done good jobs is coming out in the wash. And that's across all measures. And again, that halts people's enthusiasm, because that's the story that breaks out. Bad insulation work fell apart, or my solar system, I got conned on this, I should never pay. Whatever the case may be, those stories make the front, and that's what halts things and people moving forward from. So if your accreditation, your years of history, your honesty is got to always be for the greater good. But yeah, there's a lot of rogue traders out there, and unfortunately they do more damage, not just to that individual property, but to the whole marketing place having a bad name. You kind of get this divide, it's I'm going green or I'm not going green, and there's this whole I've got to be one or the other, rather than actually let's just look at it from my point of view and the direction of the world. What do I need to do for me to make my property better? That's how it should be looked at, not whatever your belief is or whatever you've seen. Does this make sense?
Does it make sense?
Yes.
Obviously, 2 weeks ago, was it, when we had our budget?
Yeah.
It was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because this year's been a tough one.
Yeah.
I think our entire industry.
This decade, I think. Yeah.
It's been a tough one. And obviously with the budget release and the levies taken away, obviously that has created a lot of uncertainty on how now the new schemes the government is looking at. I mean, as a business, I think it'd be okay. I think the government will release what I call in my industry nudges to get people moving into the right direction, and also obviously also helping the fuel poverty people to make the switch, because obviously affordability is not there. So, skepticism about the budget, in my opinion, but I think I'm very optimistic for 2026, where I think the government will make the right choices on helping the right people and nudging the general population start making the moves.
I think public awareness in terms of the budget is ultimately, again, it's the noise. So the big discussion was on taxation. That's what everybody was thinking and worried about. Are they going to up our taxes? And there was clearly they're going to up our taxes because we need more public services. And so it was then a case of how are they going to do that? So I think generally people are just kind of, that's all they want to know. How does it affect me? Is it going to come out of this or is it going to come out of that? Last time it was businesses, employee national insurance. This time, was it going to be on the individual's tax or national insurance or whatever? And obviously, but taxes somehow were going to go up, and they did. And I think the awareness then into what then happened, you only probably know if you're affected industry specific. So if I was a business owner last time, I was affected because my NI for my employees had gone up. This time in our industry, they knew the noise, the bad noise was the increase, and another increase was going on energy prices, and they couldn't do anything about it. So they wanted to send some good news. So
they scrapped the levy.
Now, 99.9% of people, myself included, until you explained it to me, didn't even realize we had a levy on our energy bills. This was a proportion of our bills every month that was going out to pay for schemes that governments would give to less affordable owners of homes or renters of homes or housing association things. So by scrapping that levy, it allowed them to reduce energy bills by £150 per home. So they can be seen to be ticking the box of the noise.
But a week later,
they're just going to use taxation money created then to go into funding it a different way, because the funding of that is still going to happen. So they've only robbed Peter to pay Paul, but shut the noise down for the majority of people.
But didn't they just announce the £108 a month levy or £108 a year levy for the upgrade of the electric transmission lines, etc.? Because obviously, if we're going into the future of electrifying majority of the homes, the grid has to handle it as well. So that needs that whole infrastructure to be to handle the electrics. And I also believe that we need to invest in that electrifying, because we have a lot of electricity being wasted at night time, during the day, where we can hopefully have big plants to store it and then distribute it, which then should bring the cost of electricity down. I think because of the wastage, it's keeping our prices high.
Yeah. I think it's I heard somebody the other day, a gentleman who runs Octopus, and he was talking about, we're an island, You know, we have so much wind farm opportunity, and we do have generally good wind farms out of sea in this country, but because of politics, red tape, we haven't yet moved towards onshore wind farms, and I think that's now focused to try and move forward. But we are an island, and we have so much opportunity to create natural energy.
But believe it or not, over 40% of electricity is from the wind farms in our waters.
It's crazy. But then you hear, you got certain wind farms that are being used at way less than their capacity because of red tape and brutal reasons and whatever. But all of those things have to be maxed out, and again, be brave to say, okay, well, let's move in this direction, but at the right pace, in the right order, and maximize on them, because we can't go from zero, or in this instance, from 100 to net zero really quickly. Everybody's got to do it, and that's by everybody buying into their own situation. So yeah, it's an interesting journey.
Well, we'll have to watch out for this space in the next few months.
Yeah.
We'll see how the next 3-4 months and the noise that comes out from the world of energy efficiency. So, Andy, I think in conclusion, like me, I'm a very optimistic person. The world of energy efficiency has revolved and revolving. I think consumers are getting to the grips of it, because there is a lot of public awareness, and it's happening quite often. I'm seeing a lot of it. And I think we're here to help our customers. We'll help. It's not about me selling a heat pump or a solar. It's, again, the whole purpose of what we have here is to educate.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest encouragement, is the education. And for consumers, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or ask questions. And my biggest advice to anybody is get absolute trust in what you're being advised or told or sold, because it's a big transition to your home and the way of living. The way we look at houses in 10 years from now, homes will look completely different, right? In so many different ways. So it's that transition is really important. You seek the right advice, but you trust that advice. You almost research and was that advice good? Am I being told the right things? Because that's where it goes wrong, and that's where you won't get your personal value, and then have a look about how the rate of return, and understand the knock-on effect one can have to the other by doing it X, Y, and Z. Yeah.